No matter how long you've been an audiophile, I bet you've never heard of a proximity sub. Well, maybe you have if you watch me religiously, because I have talked about it in the past. However, whether you've heard about it or haven't heard about it, today you're going to learn a lot more about it, especially from the designer himself, a physicist, Arian Jansen. So stay tuned. Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good day, and I'm going to try to make it better if you're an audiophile that likes to learn about new things. May not be juice worth the squeeze kind of new things, but just like I showcased with Panzerholz's last video, I like to focus on things that nobody else focuses on that truly evolve the hobby. And yeah, the juice may not be worth the squeeze, the value equation may not be the highest, but if you have everything else taken care of, if you have your ducks in a row, you have all the fundamentals, you've got a great pair of speakers, you've got a great room taken care of, you've got the electronics, the outlets, all the fundamentals are taken care of. There are people that have the money and desire to get that nth level of performance. And I showed it with Panzerholz, and you're going to be seeing a lot more in the future on that. Today, I want to feature the Proximity Sub by Arian Jansen. And you've seen me talk about it in the past when I went to Rick Brown's house. And I even did, I think, some music clips there. But it was cost prohibitive for me to try it at my home because at that time, only Arian could come out and calibrate it for you. Now, Scott Walker Audio is carrying it and has been approved to help calibrate it in people's homes. Takes one of the barriers out of it that was a problem for me in the past. But this is going to give you the concept first. I'm also going to give you some music clips, although on a cell phone, you probably don't get that much bass definition to tell that much. But you can go to Scott Walker Audio and have them AB it for you. It still may not be cost equation or aesthetics. You do have to have a proximity sub, by definition, closer to you, proximity, than the rest of your system, ideally. And so you're going to have to run a long cable sometimes. The aesthetics may not work in your room. There's still some barriers. I totally understand if people are going to say, this is not for me. However, it's not snake oil in the sense of this is done by a physicist. There is some science behind it. And that's what I want to show you. Those kind of things that are at the nth level. You may be at the end game for everything else. This may be right up your alley. I hope you enjoy this demo from this was Costa Mesa. I got to get caught up because I'm going tomorrow to Audio Advice Live and Rally. Then I come back, I go to Vegas to visit Noel Lee from Monster Cable fame. Then I visit somebody that bought pretty much everything in my room. He bought it for his room in Utah. I'm going to showcase that. Then I go to Minnesota for a Bach install and then amazing system there. Then I go to Perlisson, an event at Perlisson in Wisconsin. Then I go to Audio Advice, no, not Audio Advice. I go to CEDIA in Denver. And also I'm going to probably Fredericksburg and my friend Dave Olson, who you've seen in my videos recently. And also he's building a room from scratch. I'm going to be showcasing that install hopefully in August too, if I can fit it all in. So enjoy this video from Costa Mesa. I still have more from Costa Mesa to give you, but enjoy this for now and I'll see you back here soon. Alrighty guys, I got a special treat for you today. You've seen Scott Walker and you've seen Arian Jansen on my channel before, mainly to talk about the awesome tape deck and his recordings, and refer to my prior videos on that because that's worth watching and talking about. However, we're not going to talk about that as the primary here. We're actually going to talk about a sub that I have featured on my channel before. It was at Rick Brown's house. And it's called a proximity sub. And I've never encountered a proximity sub before. I tried to understand it and we tested it at Rick's house and it did make a difference. So wanted to get though from the designer himself and also why Scott Walker's now you're going to be selling these, right? Yeah. Because as I understood it, it actually entailed you setting it up at somebody's house. Is that right?
That's the way we did it in the past.
Okay.
Which was kind of a burden from that.
Tough to sell when you have to go to every house.
Now, he's trained us on how to set it up. So in the future, we
You'll
are
do it.
able
Okay.
as the dealer to set them up at people's houses. So that'll be, but this is not a product for consumers to try and do on their own. It has to be set
Has
up
to
by
be a
either
professional
Arian
setup.
or from us or somebody that.
So let's rewind a bit and just explain to people what you're trying to accomplish with this sub.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can. Again, we're here in this room with these absolutely magnificent speakers, by the way, that will go down to about 27 hertz or so, something like that.
Okay.
So these speakers, they are able to give you all the bass you need.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would put them in the middle of a football field, so you would sit there, they would perform perfectly because you get a traveling wave from these speakers right
The
to
full
you.
wavelength, yes.
Yeah, right to you as a listener. However, not many people use them on the football fields. They actually use them in a room. And in a room, these traveling waves work pretty well, all the way down to 80 hertz, 100 hertz, 60 hertz sometimes, depends on the room. And after that, these traveling waves, they will actually convert into standing waves. So they will, instead of traveling, they will stay at a certain place in the room. And the characteristic of a traveling wave is that they have the pressure, the air pressure and air velocity is 90 degrees out of phase. So you go from one pressure point, and then kind of wind, if you want to call it, that's the air velocity, to the next pressure point. And so where the pressure is high, the air velocity is low, and where the air velocity is high, the pressure is low. And that's the natural way that a wave propagates through air. And as a human being, our hearing, our ears, together with our brain, are tuned in to hear these natural waves. So if we are in the room and we have these low frequencies, we get standing waves, and that with standing waves, this pressure and air velocity relationship is lost. And if that is completely lost, and it could be totally out of phase, what your brain thinks when it hits your ears is that it's kind of flapper in the wind. And what it does, it will suppress that. It will suppress that as undesired noise. So your bass is going to be suppressed by your brain as undesired noise. So
because it's unnaturally, it's not preserved the relationship, so that it becomes an unnatural bass frequency that your brain says, oh no, that's not a natural frequency. Discount it. I'm not gonna acknowledge that.
I always kind of use the example of suppose that we have a discussion outside on a windy day, and we can talk to each other, and that's all nice. The wind is around us, and so, and we're going to record that on our iPhone, and then when we play it back, we all of a sudden hear on the playback the flapper of the wind on the iPhone. Yep. So was that flapper not on our ears?
It was on our ears.
Yes, it was. But as human beings, with our intelligence, basically, it's taken out. It's taken out as unwanted noise. Yeah. And that is what you have to see in this case. And again, you had your experience with.
So just in a practical way, I had some super duper speakers from a very, very well-known company at my store, and Arian comes by my store all the time. I said, Arian, why don't I have deep bass in this room? And if anybody would know it was him, he goes, well, I don't know, let's measure the room. Puts up a microphone, pulls out his computer, measures the room, and he goes, Scott, the deep bass is here. Look, here it is. And he goes, more than that, look at the driver. The driver is displacing a half an inch. He goes, 12-inch driver displacing a half an inch. We have deep bass in this room. He said, but where we're sitting, you cannot hear that deep bass. Your brain's not registering it. He said, so there was a quite large speaker, and that room's not huge. It's a modest size room. So he said, if I had the Proximity Sub in here, it would correct that bass relationship, and you would hear that deep bass in this room.
Interesting.
Yeah. So on a secondary note, we were listening to a tape here yesterday, and I've heard the tape hundreds of times. We were listening to it last night. I was over there, and I heard information in the bass region on the tape I have never heard before. I'm not kidding you. There's stuff on that tape. I was flabbergasted, you know. So what the Proximity Sub does, it's an active bass room correction system.
Yes.
Is really what it is. It doesn't add bass
Yes.
energy into the room like a traditional subwoofer does.
Yes, again, we use a subwoofer. It has to be a small subwoofer, preferably 10-inch,
Okay.
in a small box, sealed box, because we only, what we're trying to do, and I was talking about it earlier, we have the relationship of the pressure and the velocity, and that gets lost in a room because of the standing wave and the reflections. So what we really would like to achieve is that we can get that pressure and velocity relationship back at the listening positions. So that means that at the listening position, if we can restore that, it all of a sudden sounds again like it's a traveling wave from the speaker field, from the stage that we are basically simulating, back to the listener. And for that, we use this small sub that is abundant of pressure, because it's a small thing. It can deliver pressure, but it cannot deliver a lot of velocity. So we have kind of disconnected the pressure and the velocity, at least within the first 30 or 40 feet or so, which is larger, much further than the size of the room. So we have disconnected it, and then with this controller, we can actually bring that back into...
That's the controller there.
Yeah,
I
this is the
recognize it
controller.
from Rick's house.
Yeah. So with that controller, we can basically reconstruct that relationship at the listening position. So at the listening position for your brain and your ears, it really sounds like it's a traveling wave coming from the music.
Yeah.
And that is all the difference, because even though the energy is hardly changed, because there's not a whole lot of power coming out of that subwoofer at all, the energy is hardly changed, but all of a sudden your brain registers it, and you get this whole bass spectrum there, and you get the impact of a bass drum and all that kind of stuff that otherwise kind of feels like very flimsy or so.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's there, but again, the energy is still coming from the main speakers.
It's being fed the signal, right?
From the preamp.
From the preamp into that controller.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you've got some calibrations and measurement tools to dial it in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And is it based on the room being sealed, closed, and the pressurization, would that change with the doors open or not? Or
It will always change a little bit.
okay.
But in reality, the mismatch you have in pressure and velocity is much larger than what the door basically can do. But I always say, okay, how do you listen in the room? Do you listen with the door open? Do you listen?
Calibrate it to your normal.
And you tune it to that.
Yeah. So what is your predominant listening way, and where do you sit? All that kind of stuff, and that's how we're going to dial it in. You say if you have always your door open, let's dial it in like that. It will still work with the door closed.
Interesting.
But let's do it at
So Jason, if you want, we can sit you down and play it with and with it.
With that, without, I've done this
Just do a
demo before,
with
and
it
it's
on
really
off.
cool. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, this track that was playing seemed pretty good. Why don't we just play it and turn it off? So
we can try it with it. Let's do it. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So let me turn it on and see where we are, and then we'll defeat the system and turn it back on. Off and on.
Okay.
I'll turn off the device correction system. Start it again. That wasn't it.
You might want to rewind to that.
Yeah.
high you control? What are the different controls for?
Basically, that's kind of the interesting thing is that on a normal subwoofer you have your crossover frequency, and the crossover frequency on this device is always fixed. It's the same for every setup.
Is that right? Okay.
And that crossover frequency filter has a special phase progression in that filter that basically makes sure that the subwoofer, once you dial it in, keeps doing its work over the whole frequency range, base frequency range, basically. So the controls there are not
the normal
they're
crossover.
Normal crossover. That is all done. It's basically the controls are there to shoehorn it into the specific room. So you have level and standard 0 180 degrees phase. That's nothing special. But then you have what I call a parametric shelf, where you can actually address certain areas of the frequencies a little bit more. And there is a group delay, which basically allows you to delay certain parts of the frequency range. But it also, and that's very important in this case, because again, like you say, you have to shoehorn it into the exact
And based
situation.
on where you set it up too, probably.
Yeah, it's.
Does it matter where you put it in the room, or you would just calibrate it differently?
Yes, it basically doesn't matter. It's a proximity sub, so it needs to be physically closer than the listener is to the
interesting.
to the main speakers.
Okay.
But it doesn't have to be much closer. But you need to keep in mind that if that sub needs to correct something that comes from your main speakers, it has to be able to be earlier than the main speakers. It has to be at your place before the wave arrives, because otherwise we're too late to correct anything.
Yeah, so I think concentrating on a single instrument, I don't hear more bass per se, but it's more like the refinement of like when the hammer hits on a piano, that little thud, and you get a little bit more of the texture and I started just concentrating on the entire production than individual things, and that's where I think that is when the A-B difference became more clear. So I think it's not something you concentrate on more bass like you do with the sub, more extension, more amplitude, but it's the subtle cues and the presentation as a whole.
Yes, it's exactly that thing. Like I said, it's not. That's why we use a subwoofer, but that's basically a misnomer for what we're doing here, because the subwoofer implies that we are doing getting more low bass. That's not what it is. We are really correcting. That's why I like to call it an active room treatment. We're correcting the bass that comes from the main speakers. The whole system will also not go lower in frequency than what the main speakers can do.
Okay.
So for instance, in this case, the main speakers, I think they're going down to about 27 hertz or something like that. And when we tested the room before we started that, we could go down to about 45 hertz, which is actually pretty good by itself already, if you can do that, if you can keep the wave running. But after we dialed in the proximity sub, we could actually go down to 27 hertz. So 27 hertz is correctly propagating from the speakers at the listener position. And some of the things we did, like with the yellow Touch album, where it is very low bass.
Okay, that would probably be more pronounced.
Yeah, there it's very clear what kind of enormous, and the energy is not more than it's in the recording. It's not more than what the speakers give out, but it's all of a sudden there.
Okay.
For your hearing.
Well, it's fascinating. Is it somewhat, people are going to immediately equate it to, I guess, the swarm method of eliminating standing waves by just spreading bass all around. Is this just a quasi way of doing that same thing with one sub, or is this a totally different?
It's a different approach.
Okay.
It's a different approach. Yeah, there are people that spreading subs around, and actually that does work to some extent.
Right.
It helps, but what it does here is specifically addressing this issue of your brain not buying what you get to hear.
Yeah, and I think that makes it more understandable how you explain it. Why it's called the proximity sub. It has to be closer to you.
Yeah.
Than Okay.
Yeah, so most setups in rooms, I always say, okay, where would you like to have the sub uh, conveniently placed, basically? It has to be closer, conveniently placed. If you have a coffee table next to your listening position, let's put it there. That's very close to
Oh,
you.
yeah,
So
right,
we have a lot
right.
of control. In this case, if we put it right here, then people are going to fall over it and so
Yeah.
we,
So you have a pretty long cable here.
yeah,
And it's just one cable, it's a power cable plus a,
power cable and
And like an
a
RCA.
single RCA.
okay. And is there any trouble with ground loops or anything like that, being that far away and the long
No,
RCA?
actually, there's a little bit of trick there, which
Okay.
is a special attenuator that sits between the RCA and the sub.
Like an isolation?
It's not really an isolation device, but it reduces pretty much every ground loop noise you may have is about 24 dB.
Oh, without a transformer or anything?
Yeah.
Interesting, okay.
So it will reduce that with about 24 dB. So that's why we first had a cable all the way to there. So it's not necessary. You can just plug it
Yeah.
right there and.
But as you know, he's encountered it, when you plug in a sub way across the room in a
Yeah.
different outlet, you have the different ground potentials,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then this thing
yeah,
ends up
Absolutely.
humming like crazy.
Yeah,
So
that's-
yeah,
that's
it's good that you've thought about,
I thought about it. Because
Okay.
That's a no-go.
Yeah, that wasn't an obvious thing that would be.
you solve one problem, but
So-
you create another bigger
Yes.
one. Yeah, so that's great.
That's taken care of.
Okay,
by
well, that was my next
attenuator.
question. If it's gonna be close to me, is it gonna
Yeah.
cause any issues? Okay, and what is the price for this and the setup and all of that?
The system is $15,000.
Okay.
That's a controller, a JL woofer that we use, and a moderately priced cable. You know, if people have a particular cable that they want, then we can
Yeah.
talk about that. But there's nothing out there like it that corrects bass at the level that this does. And they're hand built by Arian, so there's no economies of scale at all. You know, they're all expensive, crazy parts.
It's actually a very attractive controller. I mean, that's not like a cheap plate amp thing that you
Yeah.
deal with, so. But you basically set it once and forget it,
Yeah.
unless you,
For
okay.
that room, yes. Yeah.
And then
Okay.
it has these 10-turn dials with a scale on it,
Okay,
because most people will have the urge
to play with
start
it,
play with it.
so you got the
And,
mark.
Yeah, so you can do that, but you can always put it back exactly the same setup.
Okay, good.
Because it has it's 10-turn dial.
Yeah.
With a very accurate scale, so you can get it back to.
You can take a picture of
a
it
tenth-
and then
a
play
tenth
with
of
it and get it back.
percent of, actually, just let me show you this. At the end of the setup, we'll just give out
Oh,
a
okay.
sheet like this,
Okay, all
which
right.
gives you exactly the level and the phase and the frequency of the parametric shelf, and whether the shelf is low or high, as well as the group delay. So people can play around because they will do that anyway.
Okay.
But you can always go back to.
That's great. Okay.
People
to
do that
what's-
anyway.
No.
You know these neurotic audiophile types, I guess. Eric.
Well, in the realm of tweaks and stuff, people spend a lot of money on cables. They spend a lot of money on isolation devices, but things that help improve what you hear in your room. And the issues with rooms corrupt whatever you spend on this gear. And so anything that helps improve that, you don't have to always buy new speakers. In fact, putting a better speaker in a bad room it's not a good payoff.
So, as to your point, we're setting up these speakers, and there was a couple different spots that they really sounded great in. So Arian goes, listen, guys, let's find this spot where they soundstage and image the best, but not really have the best bass response of the other spots,
Right.
and we will clean that up with the proximity sub. So
Yep.
that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, so you can really focus on getting the soundstage right and
Right.
getting the depth right and everything. And then if that's not the best place for bass, no problem, we'll fix that.
Right.
afterwards.
So
Almost every speaker has issues with bass because
For sure.
you shouldn't symmetrically load bass in a room anyway, and rarely is the tweeter and mid-range in the best location as where you should put the bass.
Yeah.
So you constantly have that trade-off even with the best speakers, and that's why I recommend subs, period, to
Yeah.
help alleviate for other purposes. But this was very innovative to me. I had seen this a few years ago at Rick's house. I've never seen it at a show, so props to you guys
Yeah.
for bringing it to a show. Props to you to
So
Explain it where I somewhat know what's going on.
So we will have it at the Dallas show also.
Okay,
We'll
awesome.
use it there.
Okay.
And then he built me 2 controllers, so we'll have them for demonstration at each one of our stores.
Okay, so come to
So-
Dallas. If you're down in South, you can't hear this over in Orange County. It's definitely worth demoing at least. I mean, like I said, there's lots of tweaks that are much more costly that don't have the potential benefit
right.
that this has.
That's right. Yeah, so we're very pleased and proud to represent the Sonorus line, and in particular this bass correction device, because there's no perfect room. Every single room is imperfect. So what we're trying to do is get more performance out of the gear and the speakers that you already own.
Mhm.
You can't do a lot to your room mostly. So how do we correct what's in the room for you to get more enjoyment, more performance out of the gear you already own? That's
Yep.
really
And people are starting to realize, I mean, I know Von Schweikert puts a sub in the back, the swarm method. People are realizing, you know, the advantage of subs and dressing the bass in the room. So we got a new novel approach that you guys should check out. Also check out his deck, because that's, if I got a tape deck, that would be the one. And your recordings are phenomenal. So maybe I'll come back tomorrow and we'll just chill and listen to some good recordings.
Oh,
so
that's some
cue up
good
some good stuff.
You will-
Surprise me tomorrow and we'll do that. But yeah, thanks for taking your time. We don't want to close the room too much longer, but appreciate
I
you
have a
sharing.
special tape just for you.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Stay tuned, guys.
Thanks, Jason.